Malacanang says he will be brought to a local court first before the ICC. What is the process as soon as he arrives at the Rotterdam airport?
Well, at least per the Rome statute, the custodial state must bring him to a local court, right? In this particular case, I think the PNP served the warrant of arrest and turned over custody to the international police. Right now, the international police has to bring them to a member state's local judicial authority to determine the validity of the arrest. So I think strategically what they did was, considering that we're not a member state, the ICC and the Rome Statute no longer rules, no longer binds us, then the more strategic and legal thing to do, and the safer thing to do, I think, is to bring them to him already directly to the Netherlands, check with the local courts there before bringing him to the detention facility of the ICC.
So were any of Mr. Duterte's human rights violated in the process?
My humble legal opinion is no, because he was read his rights. The warrant of arrest was given to him eventually because, you know, arresting officers don't have to have it in their pocket all the time. Because when you cascade, let's say, for example, a warrant of arrest, you can't expect all police officers to have it in their pocket. And if they see somebody or if they see you, they can arrest you. They have to subsequently show the warrant of arrest, which was done in the case of President Duterte. There was also a red notice. And in fact, he was given the chance to avail of remedies before the Supreme Court. And prematurely, his lawyers were announcing that there was a TRO. I think that was unethical, right? Pinangungunahan yung Supreme Court. But regardless, wala namang nailabas sa TRO until 11:03, until the airplane flew to Dubai en route to the Netherlands. And then thereafter, even today, the Supreme Court said categorically that they were not able to establish a clear right. What is a clear right being violated when you are being served a legitimate warrant of arrest, which, by the way, the Supreme Court said in a 15-0 decision that the ICC still has jurisdiction over the Philippines for crimes that happened prior to the withdrawal, which are the indicative dates in the complaint.
But, you know, the legal team of the former president keep repeating otherwise.
I think there's, to be honest, intellectual dishonesty there, right? The first one is, I was there when the decision of the pre-trial chamber on jurisdiction was read.
Well,
I was in the ICC.
Take us back. What day was that?
This was sometime in July 2023, and it was read there, and it clearly the ICC already held with the intervention, by the way, of the Philippine government. The Philippine government was the one questioning the jurisdiction of the ICC through the OSG, and the pre-trial chamber said
there was full opportunity to question
the entire machinery of the state, the legals. When they were still in good terms, I think, right? It was the Philippine government who was questioning that before the breakup. And then thereafter, the ICC said we have jurisdiction. In the Pangilinan case, the Supreme Court said there were still jurisdiction over crimes that happened prior to the effective date of our withdrawal. Meaning to say, it's the Supreme Court, it's the ICC. What is the basis of them saying that just because you withdrew, automatically you no longer have binding obligation? That makes it easy for despots to escape international accountability. They will just withdraw and then automatically...
Which was, of course, the reason why we withdrew in the first place, right?
But it's an intellectual dishonesty for lawyers to actually argue an argument like that, even if there's already a Supreme Court decision.
All right. May we go back to the local court? The former president can argue there and also appeal, or his lawyers can argue for him in that court.
In that local court, no, they can take a look at whether they can ask for interim measures like provisional release. We expect that they will do this because of his old age, for humanitarian reasons. But, you know, the local court has to balance that with the following. Number one, let's say, for example, is he a flight risk? Number two, how grave are the accusations against him? In this particular case, it's super grave. It's super grave.
But flight risk?
Flight risk is a little bit, you know, 50-50, I will have to say, because I'm not intellectually dishonest, right? It's 50-50, right? But definitely the gravity. And the third one, the consideration there as well, is whether he will tamper with evidence or he will tamper with the potential witnesses, which I think could be the case. because we've seen the track record of the Duterte administration wherein they make, complainants back off, right, by threatening them and by tampering pieces of evidence, which is why for us it has been difficult to actually prosecute cases because the case records are no longer there. We can't have witnesses. They are threatened by police officers.
They recant their testimony.
Correct. And they don't want to pursue anymore because their lives are at risk. So I think because of those two considerations, I think it should not be given provisional liberty, but they will try, I think.
Do we know which local court it is?
I would suspect it's going to be in the capital, in Amsterdam.
Not to belabor this point, no, Attorney Dino, but some kasi are saying na, okay, all the crimes, no, there's no argument na up until March 2019 when we removed ourselves from the ICC, talagang valid yun, covered, no arguments there. But the arrest happened, nawala na tayo sa Rome Statute, and therefore there's kind of this back and forth about mag-a-apply pa ba itong rules, hindi na ba itong mag-a-apply? Yes, apply siya sa crimes before, but dun sa arrest part, na parang may extradition pa dapat ba? Ano ba talaga? What's the bottom line?
The arrest kasi is being issued because the court has jurisdiction over the subject matter, right? But when it comes to the rules that the Philippine government will follow, hindi siya applicable na kasi wala na ako eh. Pero because that is procedural. Procedural rules is prospective. In other words, the moment I withdraw, it's no longer binding for me. But for substantive, ibig sabihin yung very essence of the law, that is retroactive, right? In the reading of the law, in the construction of the law. So when it comes to our obligations, substantive obligations, the indicative dates are still there. But in terms of whether the rules are still binding, from the moment that we drew forward, it's no longer going to be binding to us.
Can the former president ask the ICC to bring him back to the Philippines because his rights were violated? Is that a possibility at all?
He can ask the ICC. He can ask the ICC. I think he will try. But I really, to be fair, much unlike how the Philippine National Police behaved during the past administration, like, to be honest, a killing machine. In this particular instance, the Philippine National Police was very professional, right? There was no indication of violence. It was surgical. It was swift. It was very professional. Kitty Duterte was cursing them to their faces, but they kept their cool. And they read the Miranda rights to President Duterte. They gave them the warrant. They treated them properly.
It was quite a swift operation.
Yeah, there was a medical team that checked on his condition.
He's being fed fried rice in the plate.
Sandwich.
Yeah, so I think he was actually treated very humanely. This is in stark contrast to the victims of the drug war, right?
Okay, well, Attorney, let's talk about what happens when the president reaches The Hague in the Netherlands. It will be the pre-trial stage, right? And there are 6 steps to that. The first will be the first appearance. What happens there, and how soon can we expect that to happen?
Forthwith. That's a very...
We all know what that means now.
That's a
Please, we all know what it means.
contentious term now.
Definition of this word.
But it is immediate, right?
Immediate.
Immediately, right? After the proceedings in the local court, right? He will be brought to the detention center, and forthwith he will be doing the preliminary appearance. In the preliminary appearance, his rights will be read to him. The charges against him will be read to him, right? And then his identity will be verified. Okay, so that's just a preliminary appearance, of course.
What can halt that forthwith procedure? Immediate procedure. Medical emergency,
Medical
perhaps,
emergencies, or maybe...
Wala nang ligo-ligo, diretso na.
uh,
Sorry, I have to...
Meron naman reasonable time, basta siguro hindi masyadong malalang delay, no? The second one, after that, within 60 to 90 days, they will schedule the confirmation hearings. Itong confirmation hearings, again, grabe yung steps ng ICC. Iba yung issuance of warrant of arrest. In our local system, pag issue ng warrant of arrest, arraignment, prepare for trial.
Yeah.
Dito, issue of warrant of arrest based on substantial evidence to believe that a crime has happened.
As a suspect, diba?
As a suspect, and then issue ka na warrant. And then may confirmation hearings pa ulit yung pre-trial chamber to check whether trial should pursue based on substantial evidence to believe. So, mas mataas sa quantum of evidence required. No? Hindi pa siya proof beyond reasonable doubt, substantial evidence to believe pa, but it is higher than reasonable grounds to believe. No? doon, in the issuance of the warrant, it was only the prosecutor who participated and sought for the issuance of the warrant doon sa pre-trial chamber. In this confirmation hearings, magpa-participate na yung witnesses, yung complainants, and even the accused.
So maghaharap sila.
So para siyang mini-hearing.
Witnesses.
The witnesses.
Who are now in custody somewhere.
Supposedly, right? And then if the prosecution is able to establish that the quantum of evidence required, which is substantial evidence to believe that the crime has been committed, the pre-trial chamber will order that the trial will ensue. And then hindi na yung pre-trial chamber. May bago na namang set of judges who will do the trial. Can you imagine the several layers, the due process, which is all of a sudden
checking.
They are
Checking.
obsessed with due process.
Yeah,
I see.
I used the wrong word, custody. I meant in a safe house, no? They're kept in a safe house.
So three new judges, right? So we had 3 female judges na nakita na natin yung picture nila.
That's a
all
pre-trial
over.
chamber.
That's a pre-trial. And then the next step, another 3.
Yeah, another set of judges. And then actually, in the Philippine setting, di ba, after kung na-acquit ka, tapos na. Right? Kasi may constitutional
jeopardy.
prescription against double jeopardy. In the proceedings of the International Criminal Court, almost automatic yung appeal. So meron ka na namang dadaan ng appeal. Either the accused or the prosecution can appeal.
Kahit
right?
na-acquit?
Kahit na-acquit. Why? Because they, based on their, may double jeopardy pa rin sila, but it only starts after the appeal process. In other words, after the appeal process, in-acquit ka pa rin, you can no longer file any case.
Okay.
Right? But it's a fundamental part of the entire process for them. In other words, it's not a separate and distinct process from the entire line. So, and that's going to be the appeals chamber. So, kitang-kita mo, there's due process, which is all of a sudden important in this country.
Tapos may backup siya lagi.
I want to ask a last question before we let you go, attorney. Should this government, because what about the police that participated in this war on drugs? Should a body be formed to do the investigation and to charge?
That's a very good
them?
question, and that's really something that I think must be discussed. No, when a nation experiences mass atrocity of this gradient, of this latitude, you know, we're all somewhat traumatized. We're all somewhat injured, and it's difficult for us as a nation to recover from it. More so the victims. Imagine 30,000 people.
Has to be some form.
There has to be what
justice,
we
not
call in international law or in the academic world, what we call transitional justice mechanisms. So I'll just briefly
Sige,
discuss these 3
quickly,
things.
quickly.
Right? The first one is there has to be some sort of compensation and assistance to the victims and their families. Right now, they're left on their own. There are no resources given to them to allow them to recover. Bahala na kung may volunteer, bahala na yung simbahan. That
Yung mga
shouldn't be the
remains
case.
pa nga daw, kailangan minsan kunin sa sementeryo dahil walang pambayad.
Tapos paano yung trauma ng mga anak, ng pamilya, yung nakita na binaril sa harapan nila. Maraming ganun. No one is taking a look at them, right? So in transitional justice mechanisms, we have to assist them in their recovery. Number 2, we have to discuss as a nation what happened, and we have to have a consensus on that this is wrong. And we will commit that we will never do it again.
I remember the Truth Commission that never happened.
The Truth Commission.
After...
And it has to be documented, by the way. Why? Because the third part of transitional justice is memorialization. It is important for us to pass on the knowledge to the next generation. There has to be, if you've been to Holocaust museums all over the world, there has to be like memorials, right? There has to be a commitment from our country or from our nation, each one of us, that this thing should never happen again. I think that a lot of the discourse are whether Marcos and Duterte, the infightings. I think the discourse now has to be, what about the victims? How can we assist them? We have to have those transitional justice
It's no longer the
mechanisms.
political.
Those are most important, right? And we shouldn't miss the forest for the trees. Ultimately, the reason why we're doing this is because there are victims who are advocating for them, right? Usually we discuss the politics.
Is an not enough?
The Applecom is not enough because they're involved. They're involved, right? Remember, it was the state that is involved. It's the entire machinery of the Philippine National Police. And that's the reason why they should be part of the process of accountability, which is the Truth Commission, by the way. I think we're unwilling and unable to prosecute President Duterte and Bato de la Rosa, but we should be willing and able to prosecute the lower ones. So the Department of Justice should forthwith file cases and investigate the lower ones who were involved in the drug operation.
But should not the president form a body, a higher
The
body
Truth
that
Commission.
will focus, that will have just focusing on these cases?
I think it's the legislature. That should be the natural conclusion of the Quadcom, because this will require budget, this will require subpoena powers, etc., etc. I think that should be the conclusion of the Quadcom.
Well,
On a
Attorney-
different topic. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, there.
So,
That's cute.
well, you are an alumnus of the Hague Academy of International Law. And surprisingly, we got videos from Reuters and the Associated Press showing some demonstrations or protests. And there were, in fact, videos for pro-Duterte and anti-Duterte. Here are some of them.
Justice now! Justice now! And we are here to this for the thousands of
Is that a usual sight outside?
You know, the Hague it's what we call the Center of International Law. So there are a lot of organizations there. They were fast, right?
Yeah.
Right after, even before Duterte's there, they're already able
Before
to
he arrived,
mobilize.
yeah.
And if you can see, they know it's in support of the ICC proceedings. I was expecting that a while ago. We were trying to verify what's the
Yeah.
information, right? I said it's probably supporting the proceedings, and it appears like the pictures.
Pero
are-
baluarte ng mga Duterte ang OFWs. Right?
Well, they
And
can
they're all-
demonstrate too,
Yeah.
but ultimately, President Duterte must face the consequences of his actions. He must face the accountability forthwith.
That word again.
We should not, this is no laughing matter, but you know, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much. Attorney Dino De Leon, Director of the Human Rights and People Empowerment Center and alumnus at the Hague Academy of International Law.